I'm pretty sure that anyone that comes into contact with me knows that I have an interest in pursuing film. I think at this point you can just kind of smell it on me. Smells like film, student. But if you're new here, you might not know that I already went and made one of them there films last year. Sometime around June, I directed my first short film, and I started work on the second one shortly after, but for now, let's talk about The Streetlights Flicker. What it was like making it, what it was like doing it, what I learned doing it, etc. Let's talk about the things. I'll be touching on the wider topics of filmmaking, but since I'm sure a lot of you are interested in what it's like to make your first short film, this will be a little example. I certainly mean an example of first-time filmmaking, not necessarily good filmmaking. Because while I am very proud of the film, the two rarely go hand in hand. I know a lot of filmmakers can be kind of hush-hush about their methods, and I have just as much chance of being one of those people one day, but for now, as my Twitter bio says, so, I'm still figuring this out, you're still figuring this out, some of the things I say in this video might change completely, but for now, let's talk about what the experience was like. It already feels very distant, but hopefully this will be helpful for both of us. Okay, let's start with the who, the what, the when, the where, the whoop whoop. Streetlights is a film about a guy named Ryan who has a bad breakup and goes out into the city with his best friend to try and clear his head. But of course, maybe one of them is keeping secrets, or maybe both of them are keeping secrets, and ooh, there's drama. Also, it's like set in the future, because themes. For me at least, it's a film about breaking up, growing up, and well, moving on. How did the film come to happen? Coming towards the end of my college, I had been studying film for 2 years, and I was just eager to get something made. I especially wanted to make something cyberpunk for some reason. I just think the neon and the hoodies are real pretty, okay? I just like Shadowrun real bad. So I go to one of my friends, and I'm like, hey, I want to make something, and she says, cool, write something. So I wrote something. Bad. And more importantly than just bad, it's definitely not anything that I could have made properly. Not with the budget that I had, and not with the resources that I had. So I took a step back and I thought about what I had, and what I had was a bunch of friends that looked 17 and a hometown that looked certainly very quaint during the day. I also didn't have any money. And that seems to be a lot of what first-time filmmaking is for people that I've spoken to. It's looking at what you have and then trying to make something with that, and trying to convince the people around you to be at least half as excited about something as you are. Enough that they will give you their time and so on. I still wanted to make something science fiction. I was still interested in cyberpunk ideas. But of course, right, what you know? What do I know? Not really like you can make something cyberpunk coming of age. And that was ultimately the central concept. Imagining a world that feels harsh and too big, and ultimately disinterested in the stories of smaller people, what did those stories look like? And for me, they looked like, well, this. So I wrote the film on the Notes app on my phone, and then I rewrote it over and over again in Celtex. And that was that. I got my friend Jason to help me shoot it and do the VFX for it. We cast it using friends, and would give our free nights to working on it when we had them. Okay, a few quick questions. When is it set? The future. What happens to Ryan and or Jess and or that other guy in the alleyway? Oh no. I don't get it. It's a bike? Yes, it's a bike. Why is it a bike? Is Ryan gay? Ryan had a fight with his boyfriend. Are Ryan and Jess in love? This is one that I've been asked a few times, and I'll say that they certainly weren't when I wrote it. But of course the script is kind of an incomplete document, and certainly when it's up there on the screen, I can totally see that reading of it. So I'm not gonna say yes or no, but it seems valid. You got any inspirations? I got a lot of inspirations, but the only one that I can show you up close, hang on, I'm trying to rotate it, there you go. That's the best way. This thing. Oh my goodness. I mean, I've just been in love with Simon Stalenhag's work for like years now, so really all of it had a major influence on me. But that one in particular, just, ooh, boy. I had dreams about that picture. Oh, I get it, it's like riding a bike. Oh. Can we talk about production choices and such? Mainly the big one, the big noticeable one. Oh boy, it's a widescreen. The plan was always vintage lenses and warm lighting. The future is so warm, it's too warm, it's almost smothering. But then test shoots happened, and I would love to show you the footage, but of course it's all lost. What we found was that the anamorphic look not only juxtaposed the old and the new quite well, it actually balanced things a little bit more. There was a sense of isolation within the frame. I won't go properly into detail about aspect ratios because it's been talked to death, but if you don't know what they are, anamorphic widescreen is basically giving yourself a much wider field of view in one direction. But the lens that we had didn't give us conventional widescreen, and we weren't willing to chop the sides off and lose image quality, so we just stuck with an unconventional aspect ratio in order to sort of get the look that we wanted, or at least a little bit closer to it. Fritz Lang, he's an old boy, he said that widescreen is good for shooting snakes and shooting coffins. It's a nice aspect ratio for landscapes, but it doesn't frame the close-up well. Even when you move in close to a character, their face doesn't quite fill the frame. The rest of the world keeps on leaking in. Are we seeing some thematic relevance here? So, one person looks kind of lonely in widescreen. What does it frame nicely, though? Oh, it's a two-shot. Oh, snap. We out here making technical choices that impact the emotional understanding of narrative. Yo, never doing that again. Point is, it wasn't just because we thought it was pretty, although of course that did play a part in it. And it does certainly have its limitations and setbacks. Shooting with a projector lens essentially means putting one lens over your other lens, and so you have two sets of focus. So focusing is really tough, and racking focus is pretty much impossible, so we had to sit down and sort of plan out the shots, deciding what would be true anamorphic and what would be cropped. This was like a good way to jump into the next thing. Limitations. I didn't really have any money, so I sent costume ideas to my friends and they would send me back photos of their clothes and we would sort of pick and choose. Locations had to be carefully chosen, and we would film from 7 at night until around 5 in the morning when the sun would come up. I don't recommend doing this, but at the time it was kind of what we had to work with. We had 2 cameras but only decided to use one of them. We had one light. It was a tiny LED panel that would run for maybe an hour. All other lighting had to be found sort of on the locations. And then finally we had a Rode Mic Pro for sound, which brings me to the big old thing. Everyone says it, so I'm gonna throw my little hat in the ring. Focus on sound when you're making your film. Your ears are so much less forgiving than your eyes. This film is not shot in 4K, but I like to think, sometimes, looks pretty good. What I get the most complaints on about it though? The size of the character's ears. An almost embarrassing amount of post-production was ADR, because the sound at many points was just unusable, and while I don't think it completely breaks the film, it certainly has an impact on it. This whole scene, every single sound had to be re-recorded and added in post. Think about your sound, please, because it's gonna matter more than you think it does. Even on the new one, I gave it a lot of time and a lot of consideration, and it still took ages. Which brings us on to lessons that we should learn. Actors are amazing people, and learning to work with them is very scary, but you're not recreating the magical performance that you sort of have built up in your head. You're building something with someone else. You're kind of filtering your own emotions and ideas through someone else's experience, and hopefully leading to something that is better than either of you could have built by yourselves. I wish that I had known that while directing this, because while I think that Ash and Matt did a great job, sometimes I feel like that was in spite of me, not really because of me. I'm relatively happy with my performance on this one, but it was really out of necessity, because we only knew 2 guys who were able to be in it. I'm not the lead in the next one or anything. Sometimes scenes get cut, and you just kind of have to be okay with that. There is a short 30 to 40 seconds at the start of this film that we shot and began to edit and just didn't work, just got left on the cutting room floor. And sometimes, many times, that's just kind of part of it. Storyboards are great, but they also don't have to be particularly detailed. They can just really simply convey what you want, and that's fine. If I can find pictures of mine, I will post a few of them here. Okay, and they're gone. It's important to consider not just how your scenes function as individuals, but of course how they flow into the next ones. I know that sounds basic, but still. I have a number of issues with the writing in this, but my largest one is that everything feels quite static, and maybe that helps certain ideas come across about sort of loneliness or feeling like you're not moving on, but I would really that rather be an intentional part of the script, rather than just a product of my own limitations. Set yourself deadlines. 9 months. It took 9 months to make this, and there are a lot of reasons. Working on a project while your entire life changes, moving to a new city, starting a new job, starting university, having new friends, Uncle Ben dies because I use my powers selfishly. There's a lot to balance, and it's very tough. Dividing work between people and having set deadlines is also a big factor, of course. I don't want to minimize anyone else's role towards this, and it certainly wouldn't have got made without the help of so many great people. But for quite a few stretches of this, I was kind of a one-man band. And what I've slowly realized is you can get a film made with money, or you can get a film made with time. And I didn't have any money, but I had time, I guess, and I was willing to chip away at that rock wall until there was a little tunnel carved out in it, like in that famous video game. And the same thing happened with the new one as well, which is why it took almost as long. But yeah, ultimately, that was it. That was my first, and still is kind of my only short film. If you have any questions that I didn't answer, please, and I will pull myself through that rock tunnel to get to them, like in that famous album. But yeah, I guess that brings us on to the next one. I know I've mentioned it a few times in this, but what is it? When is it coming? Etc. Here's the thing. These projects take a lot of time and a lot of work, and it's hard to really know when the teaser comes out today. It might have come out while you were watching this. I mean, statistically it probably didn't, but if you had perfect timing, maybe it did. That would be kind of cool. Please let me know if that happened. I'm Sam, that was some stuff. I'll see you next time.